I think a lot of times where the old heads are not on point is because in this thing of ours, we have more great stories than we don't than we have bad stories. What I mean by that, when you think about this game, you can go back to the 60s and 70s. You can go Russell, you can go Magic, you can go Larry, Mike, Kobe, myself. And I was taught as a youngster that if people are going to pay to watch you perform, you put on a show. So I think a lot of times when we as old school players and old heads don't see these guys put on the show, and they're making a lot of money, and they're going to make it harder for you, I think, if they're not putting on a show, and we have to pay these prices and these streaming services. So I think we get on them so they know and understand. It's not that we're hating. It's like we want them to know and understand, like, bro, you're making $50 million, you deserve it, but that little kid that wants to see you play, don't be saying you're taking the night off when you're not really hurt. That little kid that wants to see you play, I know the three is open, but don't you think if you can just go baseline and dunk and just throw it down, it would just protect this thing of ours? So, a lot of people may think it's coming from hate, but for me, it's coming from love. I want you to put on a good show to protect this thing of ours. Guys like Charleston only made $2 or $3 million. I was lucky. I came in '92, and like I always tell people, Commissioner, my dream was to make $8 million for 10 years. That was my whole dream.
And Shaq right here kind of reminds me of a good point to bring up in all this. The money's not guaranteed. That's what a lot of the younger players, guys like Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, and just the newer generation don't really understand, because they've entered the league in a sweet spot where the money's just flowing in, and they have to understand they got to grind it out and make sure the game is appealing enough where the money continues to flow in for the next generation. And the way sometimes they kind of just go through the motion, just handle things, just taking games off, bragging about they're not going to dunk anymore. They're not really positioning the league in a way where the future generations are guaranteed to get that $100 million contract. Because entering into streaming, that is the case. These guys are really going to have to prove and show that the numbers reflect the health of the league, and thus they're going to have bigger deals, because there will be a lot lesser players bidding on the NBA going forward. This marriage to streaming signifies a lot of different things. Mainly network television channels are no longer going to be bidding on these NBA games or just having the NBA rights anymore. So the players that have the rights today are more than likely going to be the guys that are going to have the rights for the foreseeable future, unless some brand new technological shift happens.
And then I got lucky, and I don't know what you and Mr. Stern did, but it went boom, it went crazy. And then I got another hit at 100, and I was like, but my whole process was, okay, you're paying me all this money, I got to put on a show. So I just want people to, know and understand that it's not us just hating. It's like, hey, we don't think you put on a show tonight. We think you need to put on a show to protect this thing of ours. Now, when I say this thing of ours, you know exactly what I'm talking about, Commissioner, because you've done a great job of getting these kids a lot of money, and I commend you for that.
And they got to understand, them getting a lot of money and it keeps going up and up and up is not really guaranteed. That is not a guarantee. And I think guys like Anthony Edwards, sometimes LaMelo Ball and others, they do not have this understanding yet.
This generation of players, I think it is important that they hear from those who came before them, the greats of the game, and not just sacrifices they made, but how they approach the game, that there is an entertainment side to this, that ultimately all of us, are here because of the fans. I'm fortunate to be in this position because of the fans, all the current NBA players, and this whole huge ecosystem built around the NBA that, believe it or not, accounts for something like 50,000 jobs when you start including the people who work day of game in the arena and everything else. It all comes down to those 450 players, but them understanding that this is about something bigger than themselves, and that, yes, at the end of the day, it's about the competition and it's about doing all they can to win. But there is an entertainment side to this. And part it's the realization that, and it goes to television ratings. One thing that's different from the old days, there's unlimited options right now. If you want to sit down and look at a screen, you could be playing a video game, you could be looking at YouTube, you can be looking at unlimited numbers of videos on social media. Yeah, and whatever. I think my cable system has 2,000 channels, and then you go to streaming.
Yeah, all that is competition for the NBA, and That's going to be a hell of a feat, especially for the upcoming generations that basically grew up on all these options.
And multiple streaming services. So the competition is fierce. And I think, Adam, that goes back to your question about other leagues, or the NFL on holidays that we're on. It's like, I welcome the competition. I mean, we have to get better as well. I mean, and it's one thing, it's what I lose sleep over, that it every day people are making an election to pay their money to go to an NBA game, or literally every moment you're watching an NBA game, you're sitting there with the clicker deciding, is there something better else that's more engaging to watch? And part of the issue sometimes doesn't get enough focus. It's not just the number of people who watch the game, but how long they watch it. A rating is the average minute. So when people who used to watch a 2.5-hour game for on average an hour watch for 50 minutes instead of an hour, that's a significant decline in your rating, even though it's the same number of people who are engaged in your game. Number one, we're listening to what people say. I mean, I don't want people to think for a second that to the extent that, they're unhappy with, players that are resting or think there's too many three-point shooting. I mean, as you said before, the community is very focused on those issues. But at the same time, I think that the game has never been in a better place. I mean, I'm astounded on a nightly basis by what.
And he's right about that. The game hasn't been in a better place. The amount of talent that's coming in the league is unfucking believable. I mean, you could look at the teams like the Atlanta Hawks, how many guys that they got, especially in a rebuild. That's how a rebuild looks like today. The Orlando Magic, look at all the talent that they got on their team. Even the Cleveland Cavaliers, they got multiple guys coming off the bench impacting the game. And the top end of that is the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's unreal that they have that many players coming off the bench just affecting the game, not only offensively as well as defensively. So there is definitely an influx of talent, but just as Silver has stated earlier, they are looking at the reactions of the fans in real time, especially through NBA Twitter. You kind of get a real-time reaction on what the fans are really engaging with, what they like versus what they don't like. So this is a good thing about social media. It gives the NBA kind of a way of testing the temperature in the room to see if their product actually engages with fans.
What I'm seeing on the floor. And if anything, I get a bit frustrated at times because I feel there's more that the league office should be able to do to translate what I'm watching in a way that people at home are understanding how incredibly entertaining and off the charts athletic and skilled these players are. And so I genuinely believe the best days are ahead of this league. I should mention too, I'm so proud of what's happening in the WNBA right now with women's basketball. Also, been at that for 28 years now at this, supporting women's basketball, and it's really turned a corner in the last couple of years. So I just think this game, I love this game of basketball. And I think to the extent that we can bring joy to more people's lives through this game, get more young boys and girls playing this game, being part of a team, understanding the values of this game that Bill Bradley has written about and others have talked about, I think it just could be so additive to people's lives.
And that WNBA shows you how a generation of players could change the whole perception of the league. Just some of those girls that have been coming in, just present day, and the ones that are coming in currently right now, those girls already coming in with the ability to just market themselves. Like, it's unreal what's going on with the WNBA. It's a really good look, and they are in a great place. So the game overall on the men's side and female side, it is pretty healthy. But again, the league is reacting to some of their feedback on social media in real time. And the noise from that feedback is getting louder and louder. As Adam Silver has sat down with Dan Patrick, and he was kind of on the defense so much that he just brought up an idea of them making a slight change towards the timing of the quarters. You guys check it out.
But what bothers you more, the ratings or the coverage of the ratings?
The ratings are fine. I mean, we're roughly even with last season for the regular season, which was the highest ratings for a regular season in 4 years.
I wonder if Silver's going to answer that second part, because some of that coverage of the ratings is not necessarily coming from their television partner, mainly ESPN, but it's coming from a lot of independent media.
I get it, there was a narrative early in the season, we were down a bit. You've been covering the league for a long time. I mean, it seems that there's always a narrative around our sport. Too physical, too much isolation, scoring too low, super teams, player empowerment. I mean, I could go on and on.
Yeah.
And then the narrative early in the season became the ratings are down because of three-point shooting. I think those are two independent issues. The ratings are now about even with last year. And as I said, if you look more broadly at other measures of engagement, our attendance last season was the highest in the history of the league. I mean, you can't look at social media over too long a spectrum because it didn't exist. But when you add in social media, the game has never been more popular in terms of the engagement. So do I get frustrated around the narrative around ratings? Yeah, especially when, because of the decline in traditional television, the decline in cable homes, everyone's down a bit. So, plus we entered into our new deals for the next decade. So I feel good about that. But I think those narratives become a reality to the extent, especially even when we're doing well, it's still only a relatively small percentage of the population that's watching live games. So there's a lot of people out there who may not be fans of the NBA and become consumed with that story. And again, NBA seems to take a disproportionate amount of that discussion. I think maybe because we're so relevant from a societal standpoint, our players have been outspoken. There's been a history of activism, certain cases in this league. For whatever those reasons, I think at the end of the day, my job is to find more people who are inclined to want to watch live sports, to want to watch basketball, and convert them into NBA fans.
Give me this has been discussed.
I mean, one that's only been discussed a little, I wouldn't put it necessarily in the category of being so wild, is potentially 2 free throws for a foul and a three-point shot. I don't necessarily think I would do it in the last 2 minutes of the game.
Now that's interesting that came up because the league actually made it 3 free throws on that shot because of the 1994 NBA Finals between the Knicks and the Rockets. The Knicks got fouled on a 3-point attempt, but at the time the rule book only allowed them to shoot 2 free throws. But had they had the ability to make a third one, it would have changed that whole series. Perhaps they may have even won the championship. So the league actually changed the rules back then, but it seems like they're changing it back to the original way it was. Very strange that they're considering going back.
But I think that's something interesting. Something else that I'm a fan of, and I'm probably in a minority, as we get more involved in global basketball, the NBA is the only league that plays 48 minutes. And I am a fan of 4 10-minute quarters. I'm not sure that many others are. I mean, putting aside what it means for records and things like that, I think that a 2-hour format for a game is more consistent with sort of modern television habits. I don't think people in arenas aren't asking us to shorten the game, but I think as a television program, being 2 hours, that's Olympic basketball is 2 hours. College basketball, of course, is
Yeah, but
is
if
40
you like it, I'd say it has kind of a little bit of a push there.
Yeah, it's such a dramatic change to the game. I mean, I think something like that would have to be talked more about over time. I mean, incidentally,
But the pitch clock was dramatic, Commissioner.
Yeah, no, I get it, and I'm a fan of what baseball did. I'm a baseball fan, and I think some of those changes have really increased sort of the engagement, the entertainment value of the game, and so I'm paying a lot of attention to that. And in fact, I've used the pitch clock, the sort of the increasing the size of the base, et cetera, in meetings at the NBA to say, if baseball, which is more locked into tradition, and I don't mean that negatively, than any other sport. And part of what baseball provides is the tradition, the legacy, that if they're able to make those changes, certainly we shouldn't be afraid to look at changes as well. So, I also think, though, we have made a series of changes over the years. They haven't been as dramatic in many cases. We've changed the format in the last 2 minutes of the game so we wouldn't have as many stoppages. We have a coach's challenge now. We had the hack-a-shack issue. We changed the rule there. I mean, we added the cup. which we now have. We have a play-in tournament. I mean, so
those two things really benefit streaming. That's just extra inventory for streaming, for them to buy those separate packages. Also, who knows? Maybe they can host those events internationally. You never know. That Saudi money, it's eventually going to look enticing.
we've made significant changes.
But it is what it is. It looks like Silver is trying to find a perfect medium without having to take away from the 82 game scheduling. Maybe shorten up the time of the game between quarters. It sounds reasonable. At first it sounded crazy, but that may be their response to that 82 game scheduling. But then again, 82 games works perfect for streaming, especially, the fact that they're going to need inventory heading into that platform. Who knows? Netflix might be interested the next time around their television deal comes up. So there you have it. Silver weathered the storm pretty well. He has a crazy task ahead of him. He already secured a $76 billion deal. But at the same time, there is a war, a cold war, I should say, that's still raging on. And he's going to have to put out a few of the fires. But he has done a great job getting these guys paid. But he has to make sure the ship could continue sailing into the future.